Welcome to Andy Staples on 3. Greetings from SEC Media Days in Dallas. Here with JD PicKell. We're at the lovely Omni Hotel where the sun. Oh, the sun's right there.
Yep. Texas-sized sun.
It is a big ball in the sky. Did you have a coach growing up, JD, at any level where they kind of worship the sun? Did they talk about the big red ball?
Not so much sun worship. There was a lot of sun propaganda, though. And one of the things was don't let something without a heart beat you, which was sort of subtweeting the sun, which I appreciate.
The sun does not have a heart. True story. But it is very hot.
Very hot. And some days it did beat me, but, I think we won our fair share.
That is, I believe, what they were trying to beat into my son. Heat is a mentality, not heat is a construct. It feels like the Matrix. We had Dwayne Dixon at the University of Florida, the wide receivers coach, and he would talk about the big red ball.
I love that.
The big red ball is coming up. Another day dawning at SEC Media Days. This is a big one because it's interesting how they decide which teams they bring. I don't know how random it is. I think it probably has to do with when certain coaches can be here and when they can't. But this is Tennessee, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Missouri. 4 potential playoff teams.
It's a nice little slate. Little slate we got coming. I mean, a lot of teams, like you mentioned, that could be in playoff contention. And I'm excited to hear from Carson Beck. Excited to hear from sophomore quarterback Jackson Arnold will be here today. I mean,
Oklahoma didn't get the memo that you're not supposed to bring all the players people actually want to talk to, which I was thrilled when I saw it. So they are bringing Jackson Arnold, the quarterback, who he started 2 games because he had to start 1 game for Gabriel because of injury and then the bowl game. And then they're bringing Danny Stutzman, who's a quote machine, and Billy Bowman, who's also a quote machine, another key piece of that defense. Like, I don't think they understand. You're not supposed to bring the guys everybody wants to talk to. That nobody else does that.
This coming on the heels of Brent Venables letting the freshmen speak during spring football.
Oh, that was by design.
Huge.
That was by design. That was because Brent Venables is saying to those freshmen, hey, we are going to promote your brand here at Oklahoma. We want you to get out there amongst the people and want the people to fall in love with you so that if some NIL deals come along,
so be it.
You get them.
So be it. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's going to be a fun day. I can't wait.
It's going to be great. And Oklahoma's going to get the are you scared of the SEC questions. Like Danny Stutzman, I don't think is going to be able to take more than about 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah, that's going to be – we need to find the over-under on that, on what that number looks like in Vegas, because I'm with you. I'm taking the under and feeling pretty good about it.
I just remember, again, I've said this a couple times on the show, 2012 is back in Hoover. Texas A&M's going through. Missouri didn't get it as bad. I feel like Gary Pinkel just sort of radiated this, don't bother me with this, kind of stuff.
Sure.
But Kevin Sumlin got it, and his players got it over and over. Now, at that time, only they knew what Johnny Manziel was about to become.
Yep.
We didn't know that. We didn't know about Mike Evans yet. And so they're just laughing at us as we're asking, how scared are you of this SEC schedule? And they're like, whatever.
Some of that too feels like hazing, right? Like you have to kind of go through the car wash. You got to go through this whole narrative deal throughout your first however many days in the SEC, especially media days. But yeah, they're going to get it today. There's no doubt.
Yeah. We had LSU, Ole Miss, South Carolina Vandy on Monday. We talked to guys from Ole Miss. We talked to guys from LSU. We're going to talk about that. But before we get to that, another very important thing happened on Monday, and that is EA Sports College Football 25 dropped for the public, for everyone at 4 p.m. Eastern time. There's actually a monitor across from where I'm looking right now. They had it hooked up. Somebody had a PlayStation hooked up to that monitor, and I was watching the countdown clock. And I just as it hit 0, I just tweeted, "Good luck, everybody. Please don't get divorced."
that blew up too. I saw that was awesome. My heart swelled with admiration for my colleagues as Radio Row at 4 p.m. became drastically more thin, conveniently, and it was like, where'd everybody go? Oh, they're going to go play the game. Good to see these people have their priorities in order. Also, shouts to a lot of the people in the media that I've talked to that said, hey, out of pure self-discipline and self-control, I didn't bring my system to make sure that I actually got work done this week. So, both approaches.
Well, I do want to thank the folks at EA Sports for giving me that code, because it would have been a struggle if I hadn't gotten a chance to play. If you want to get a little more in-depth, I have a couple of videos out. I did one where I just put games together that I want to see this season. So you can get the first look at Ohio State, Oregon. You can get the first look at Texas A&M. You get the first look at Colorado, Nebraska, about what that's going to look like. Because honestly, it looks pretty close to the real thing. I also, just to see how good certain players were.
Sure.
Like I made an Oklahoma State at Tennessee game to see James Pierce on Tennessee side and then see Ollie Gordon.
Yeah.
So I was playing as Tennessee. The first time I had to tackle Ollie Gordon, it was ugly. They make the good players really good in this game. You had some experience with that last night too.
So I got on the sticks last night and did 3 randoms in the SEC. For those y'all familiar with, you take 3 randoms, you pick one of those 3 teams, and that's how you go. You can pick your 3 randoms within a conference, whereas it used to be 3 randoms across college football. So your buddy gets Alabama, and you're stuck with Miami of Ohio. No shade to the Redhawks. But I got Missouri. I got Luther Burden, and I was like, I wonder how good he is. 4 touchdowns in the first half. I was like, he's pretty good. So it's he's a cheat code, and in my opinion, if I get Missouri ever again, I'm rolling with them.
Well, the Tigers are here today.
Yeah, we're gonna sit down with Luther.
Let's talk about the Tigers. Let's talk about them, because this is a team that I think surprised people last year. They were coming off of basically a 500 season, and they win 11 games. They probably should have beaten LSU. You know, if they beat LSU, we might be having an even different conversation. Although they still, East-West thing, they still had the Georgia problem.
Sure,
but they played Georgia tougher than just about anybody till Alabama beat Georgia. So, I feel like with this team, can they replenish the defense? Because that is the key. The offense, I am not worried about.
I think so. I go back and forth on Missouri because I think what you just said is on the money. Brady Cook is a stud. Luther Burden, we've established, is the best receiver in college football. Theo Weiss Jr. is one of the more underrated weapons in college football. You lose Cody Schrader, but I think you still feel pretty good about what you have in that backfield.
Well, like Marcus Carroll from Georgia State.
Yeah, they're going to be solid.
Their backs are going to be good.
They'll be solid. My question is, they won 4 games last year by 1 score. And so as much as maybe they should have beaten LSU, probably would have, should have, could have lost to Florida.
Could have. And that was almost a miracle.
It was, 4th and 17. We'll talk about it for a long time out there in Columbia. Yeah. So I love Magic. I love Harry Potter. I love, I guess Hunger Games isn't magic, but I love, anything mythical and magical. That's all fun. I don't know if you can bottle that up season in and season out and win 4 games like that.
And I just think when you lose Darius Robinson, Tyron Hopper, Ennis Rakestraw, Chris Abrams-Drain, these are NFL players.
Plus your DC.
Yeah, and Blake Baker and Kevin Peoples, who's one of the more important assistants. And that's a hard thing to replace. That's a hard thing to bottle up. But I will say, Missouri got a nice draw this year.
Yeah.
And this is a conversation, I feel like we're having this more and more this week about the draw. Who got a good draw, who got a bad draw. Georgia, Florida, they seem to have the toughest ones. Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, those feel pretty manageable.
Yeah, and I think for Missouri, like if you're in that situation, you're staring down that schedule. It's like, okay, are you who people think you are? Because this schedule, with how navigable it is, like just don't slip up. Because if you go 10-2, like you're probably in good shape. My question is, if they do go 10-2, which kind of seems to be like that number we're all talking about, if you get in the dance, how much does it come back to eye test? Is there a 10-2 Big Ten team? Is there another 10-2 SEC team? And when you go to eye test, is there enough meat on the bone on that schedule to make a difference?
That's what I'm wondering. Okay, this is a good question, because we don't know this. We have not seen this play out yet. The SEC and Big Ten schedules have really gotten harder, I would say.
Yeah.
The Big 12 schedule, because the teams are so evenly matched, harder. The ACC teams feel like they're the ones that have the advantage to have the best record. But are there going to be that many 10-2 teams?
Yeah.
I just don't, because last year, you could have gotten down. I think there would have been one 10-2 team left out.
Sure.
It would have been Oklahoma, I believe, in the final rankings, because I think Oklahoma finished 12th.
Yep.
And so they would have been knocked out by the highest ranked Group of 5 champ. But I just don't know. Like, that was last year. There might not be that many 10-2 teams this year. We might be arguing over a couple of 9-3 teams sitting there at number 11 and number 12.
And here's the grenade too you throw into that whole situation. What about a 10-3 runner-up? If you're a 10-3 runner-up in the ACC, but your loss is to Florida, if you're Miami, like I wonder how that's all going to shake out. Does it hurt you to play in a conference title game?
Well, that's the big question for me, and I think that's the thing they've got to figure out. The committee has to figure out, and I don't know how they're going to handle this, because they're also maybe like a head-to-head matchup that contradict something.
Yeah.
But theoretically, you would hope that, let's say, the loser of the SEC championship game, because you're going to have to be pretty damn good to get in the SEC title.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say the loser of the SEC championship game. You don't want that team to have to fall behind the third place team in the SEC.
Yeah.
But the third place team in the SEC is probably only going to be one game different. And depending on how the SEC championship game goes, like if that team does lose by 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns in it, like what do they do? Because could you wind up losing the SEC championship game and having to go on the road? Or I mean, if we were really talking about, it's possible you could lose the SEC or Big Ten championship game, get dropped behind the third place team, and then have to go play the third place team at their place.
That's like doing the extra credit assignment, failing on the extra credit, and being dropped to a B.
Exactly.
It's like, wait, I had an A in this class, and now I'm fighting just to get back to my A grade because I failed the extra credit. It's like, whoa. And
I feel like that's something they need to take into consideration, and I assume they will. But I don't know when you get in that room and because you've just watched, like they sit together and watch all those championship weekend games.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, I don't know. That team looked pretty bad yesterday. Like, I don't want, I really hope they don't do that, because if you do penalize a team for playing in the conference championship game, you are essentially saying you don't need these things anymore.
Right. And then it becomes a matter of, well, then how much do you rest guys in the championship? I mean, is that a thing that we could see long term? Which would be surprising to me personally, but I hope it doesn't go that way.
Too big.
Yes, absolutely.
The prize of having the bye. Now, again, we will talk about this a lot more as we get closer. When the casuals come in there right at the end, like they're going to be stunned by this. Like, it's incredibly stupid to have the quarterfinals in bowl games. Like, it should be on campus. The prize of having a home game and a bye, I think, keeps the conference championship game relevant. But if you got to go, like Ohio State, if they win, they have to go to the Rose Bowl.
Right.
What is it? Is it that big of a prize? Would Regis just not play?
Congratulations, you're going to Pasadena. Like, okay, well, it's pretty far from home. It's a pretty big time change. That's a lot of travel on our guys.
How's this? Would you rather play Oregon or Penn State or Michigan again in Indianapolis, or not play that week and then get probably an easier opponent at the Horseshoe?
Yeah, in the shoe with a fired up crowd that's all the way engaged. Like, I feel like Columbus.
Like, now we'll be number 5.
We'll take that. We'll take that. And then we'll play after that. We'll go play, I don't know, the Big 12 champ after that game, potentially, or an ACC champ after that game.
You're going to play the winner of, you're going to play the 4 seed.
Probably,
Right, which is going to be the lowest seeded power conference champ.
It's a better draw than that 10-2 SEC team we were talking about, in my opinion, at least, or having to play. I mean, another thing too, like you mentioned, playing an opponent that you've already played during the season and having to beat another team or having to beat that same team multiple times. Like, that's another thing in itself.
I don't think you're going to let anybody opt out of this, but
you better not. I mean, the trend worries me is my only thing. Like, I don't think it'll happen anytime soon, but the more we get towards the conference championship games, quote unquote, not mattering to some people, I'm like, it's a dangerous path to go down.
It is, and they'll have to figure it out. And look, I don't care, because if I'm getting more high stakes games, I'm fine with it.
Sure.
As long as we have more high stakes games, I don't really care how you arrange them. So the conference championship game can matter or not. Like, that won't matter to me as long as we're getting those games. But don't damage teams for playing in them.
Yes.
Like, find a way to make it. The prize has to be big enough that you have to be willing to take that risk. And then also, like, maybe you lock it where if a team finished second in the league and another team finished third in the league, you're not putting the second place team above the third place team.
That would do numbers for the eye test crowd. Like, they would be in a blender and say, well, wait, our team looked better than that team. It's like, well, hey, sorry, you finished third. They finished second. Like, it could make things neater, but it could also make things more chaotic.
But that's what they want. This is the feature, not the bug. They want us arguing about this, JD.
I love it.
This is what they want. We're falling right into their trap.
And it's a nice trap to be in. It feels very cozy right now.
It is. And look, hey, it's a trap. But, well, speaking of traps, let's talk about Lane Kiffin. Let's talk about Ole Miss.
I love it.
Because they were here on Monday, and this is the most anticipated season, I think, in Ole Miss football history.
Yeah.
They've had good years before. They've come off good years, but I don't think they ever went into a season with these level of expectations. You had Nick Saban here working for ESPN in his new role.
Crazy, by the way.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Oh, I know. Him on Feinbaum as coworkers.
Very cool. So I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, so he's talking about Ole Miss and basically came out and said, Georgia and Alabama, those were their problems.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't match up physically. He says he thinks they can match up physically now.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw Nick Saban on the draft. Like, he's not mailing this TV gig in.
Yeah.
If he thinks that the additions they've made, the Walter Nolans, the Princely Emmanuelans, Trey Amos, he coached, so he knows all about him.
Yeah.
If he thinks the additions they've made have made them closer to the level of an Alabama or Georgia roster-wise, should we not believe him?
And that's the scary part, too. Like the defense, the obvious ones, the Walter Nolans, the Princely Emmanuelans, that's the thing that's jumping off the page that's kind of putting them over the top in a lot of our minds. But at the exact same time, even if they didn't have a returning starting quarterback, we'd feel pretty good about a Lane Kiffin offense, but they do have a returning starting quarterback. They do have Trey Harris. They do have Juice Wells now added into the fold.
Right.
And so it's kind of shaping up to where you mentioned expectations. Ole Miss to make the college football playoff has better odds going into the season than Alabama. If you told us that last year, we'd be like, wait, what? What happened? What happened to Nick Saban? What happened to that team?
Schedule based, because Ole Miss's schedule is a little bit better than Alabama's in terms of ease, but it's still crazy to think about.
Wild.
It's still, but Lane just addressed that head on and used a Sabanism to talk about it.
This has been an exciting time at Ole Miss, and going back to the New Year's Six Bowl and the Peach Bowl and that win, and so many players deciding to stay after that to come back for another season, and then the addition, a lot of credit to those players and staff obviously, but those players of additions through the portal of other players, free agency, and it's set up for a chance to have a good team. But there's a lot of work in that. There's plenty of noise out there that means nothing, and plenty of teams over years in all sports have been ranked high and haven't played well, and been ranked low and played really well. So none of that means anything. I just very appreciative to Coach Saban, who called the other day and then just stopped me and talked to me there. So kind of in respects to Coach Saban's terms, this is really, as he said, this is a rat poison situation here.
Rat poison.
Gotta love it.
It's rat poison. I feel like they're handling that well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see, because Ole Miss hasn't had, you mentioned before, like they haven't had this kind of pressure on them before.
No.
Like this is brand new, and we've seen teams that have won the national championship really the last 2 to 3 years have had that experience gene and kind of had that mental toughness. Seems like Lane Kiffin is approaching the season in that sense. Yeah,
and the other thing is, the question I get a lot about them, and it's a question I've had in my own mind too, when you have this many transfers, when there's this much churn in the roster, how do you keep the chemistry right? Because it does feel like the Ole Miss Kiffin teams have had similar chemistry. They've played together similarly. Like they seem to have a similar personality. And it's like, okay, how do you do that, bringing in all those transfers? Well, we talked to Jared Ivey about that when he was on the show a few months ago, and he's been there a while.
Yeah,
but he transferred in there, and he said it just feels like when you get there, the people who were there show you the ropes, and you just keep going. And basically, they just don't stop for you.
Yeah,
like you gotta start swimming.
There's a part of me too that we talk about chemistry and culture, and like that is something that I am a huge fan of in college football. It's one of the reasons why I love the sport. There's a part of me that looks at the way that Ole Miss does things, and they're having success, and I wonder if they're almost like, yeah, we want to have good chemistry, we want to have the necessary requirements there. But before that, we're going to have really freaking good players and put them in position, and we'll worry about chemistry later, and we'll figure that out. And it seems like it's working for them.
It definitely does. And I'm surprised that it's worked over and over again, because you feel like every so often you're going to have a clunker where the group just doesn't mesh.
Yeah.
You think we see that more in basketball where the rosters turn over more?
Sure.
But it hasn't happened yet. And this team seems to be ready. And there is so many, Kiffin talked about the guys coming back from last year. There is so much veteran leadership coming back that I don't necessarily worry about that. It's really just, can you play the best teams on your schedule? How do you handle that? They get Georgia, but they don't play Alabama. They don't play Texas. The at LSU game is critical for them.
Sure. Because
Baton Rouge has been a house of horrors for them. But the players up front will decide, because if you can beat Georgia, great. I don't think they have to beat Georgia to make the playoff or make the SEC championship game. But if you make the SEC championship game or the playoff, you're going to have to beat somebody like that.
Without question. That's kind of another little layer you throw into the Ole Miss pressure cooker is like, oh, by the way, you don't have to win the SEC to make the playoff. You don't have to beat Saban this year. You don't have to beat Kirby this year, even though you got him on the schedule, which is wild.
Which makes it even worse if you don't make it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, let's hear Lane talking about the roster upgrades that they made, because this is pretty straightforward. Most coaches aren't going to say it this way.
I think that I guess I said it after the game. We've got to recruit better, and that was not a shot towards our players, because I hate that when it's like, oh, well, the coach is saying. I said we got to coach better, but we as coaches got to recruit better, even in our thinking of evaluations and so forth. And one of the big things was I just thought, which had happened in a few games here over our time here, really with Alabama and Georgia, was there was a length and size issue. Both Kirby and Coach Saban. I mean, you learn from Coach Saban, like there's an exact profile they recruit to of size. Now that's not always easy to do everywhere. Everybody would love to have every player, 6'5", but I do think that we addressed that, and I do think that game and that was glaring. And again, we got to perform really well, we got to practice really well and coach really well, but we're going to look better coming off the bus, I guess. So we'll have more length and size.
All right, so we had some comments in the chat that we put up. Let's discuss this. H-Town Creole, as Lane was talking, Ole Miss went and got a bunch of mercenaries for 1 year. That's me first players. I love how he comments like you expect an LSU fan to talk.
Yeah, that was a nice little touch there from our guy H-Town Creole. But I think what's worth noting is the kind of guys that haven't left Ole Miss,
right?
Like Jackson Dart stayed. Trey Harris, I believe, had like a top 3 round grade, or he could have been drafted last year.
Caden Prieskorn could have
gone.
He's got like 9 kids. He's been married for like 20 years.
That's the thing. Like guys that stay, and also guys that they attract to Ole Miss. Like you wouldn't go to Ole Miss if you weren't seeing the blueprint for success. And also players talk. Like if guys were saying, "Hey, don't come here. We don't like our staff. We don't like our system. We don't like what happens here." Like that would get out, and you wouldn't land a Juice Wells. You wouldn't land a Walter Nolan, Princely Emmanuel.
Right, and that's the thing. Are they me first, or are they trying to put themselves in the best position to succeed? Because, Walter Nolan and Princely Emmanuel are in kind of similar cases. They both played on teams that underachieved.
Yep. Walter
Nolan's team fired his coach. Texas A&M fired Jimbo Fisher. Florida didn't make a bowl game last year. Princely was the best pass rusher on the team. So they probably feel like, okay, I need to play on a better team to make my position better for the draft. And look, I don't necessarily expect them to stay if they have good years. I expect them to leave. I expect them to go to the NFL.
100%. And I think it's also worth noting too.
Princely's a 4th-year player, so I don't think he has a choice.
Sure, but, yeah, he's gone no matter what.
Yeah,
but the kind of strategy Ole Miss has with, hey, we're going to be portal heavy. I don't think the staff at Ole Miss is stupid and just going to say we'll take anybody and everybody. Cancers in the locker room, welcome. Like
right.
you have a way of doing things, and if you don't meet their standards, I'm sure there's a price to be paid there.
I also think the level of player they've been able to get has risen.
Mm-hmm.
I think you look at through the years. Now their strategy's changed, and actually I talked to Lane Kiffin about this a few months ago, because initially the strategy was when you had to sit out a year after the second transfer, they would take a bunch of transfers who had 3 or 4 years remaining. And they're stuck there. Like then it's back to the old system.
Yeah.
And because somebody can say, well, I'm not playing, I want to transfer. And they go, well, you're going to have to sit out a year.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either go sit out a year or deal with the situation here. And it probably will be better for you in a year.
Yeah.
And you get people to stay that way. And that's, like when Jackson Dart came, he essentially had a full college career ahead of him, even though he'd already been at USC. Now it's not like that.
Yeah.
Now you can just leave again. And Lane said he's got to figure out what he's going to do about that. He's going to figure out how that changes, and maybe it's take guys who are just trying to better their NFL draft stock.
Yeah, and have a great 1 to 2 year run with those guys and have success. And then honestly, I mean, it's kind of like chicken and the egg situation. When you see that happen for a Juice Wells or for a Princely Emmanuel, that sends the message to all the other guys in the portal, like, okay, where have I had success? Or where can I have success? Where have transfers had success? Florida State, Ole Miss, fill in the blank.
Yeah, and it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy now, because everybody just assumes when the portal opens, Ole Miss is going to – and Ole Miss has been smart about this. They've been very smart NIL wise because they have had money to go get those guys. That they've also had money to make sure the guys they need stay. Now, one guy didn't stay.
Yep.
Lane got asked about him yesterday. Quinshon Judkins. Okay. I think Quinshon Judkins is going to have a huge year at Ohio State. I think he's going to be great. I also think for the same reason that NFL running backs don't get paid, I don't know that you needed to pay up to keep him if you were Ole Miss.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those situations, too, where if one side isn't happy, neither sides are going to be happy. And if neither sides are happy, it's not good for your football team. We talk about culture and standards and locker room and all those things. And, like, if that's something that's going to carry on into the season, doesn't matter, what Ole Miss wants to accomplish long-term. Like, Quinshon Judkins is hurting that long-term.
Right. And the thing about that position, especially in that offense, you can find someone else who can give you as much or almost as much. You might not be quite that good, but Ulysses Bentley the fourth had a better per carry average last year.
He's a stud.
And so I do think, and I've said this, and we had a mailbag question about this actually from our guy Clark Brooks. Okay. He's saying they should throw more on first down, which I tend to agree with. But if you have Trey Harris and Juice Wells and Jackson Dart, who by the way is also a running threat, in that offense, there are so many opportunities where you're going to be running into a light box that you don't need the greatest back end. Like, you don't need Ollie Gordon. You just need a pretty good back, a couple of pretty good backs, and you're going to gain yards on the ground.
As long as you have some depth there, you don't have to have, I don't think, as much star power. Yeah. Like we've seen, as good as Blake Corum was, him and Donovan Edwards last year, like that was what carried Michigan. Previously with Georgia, deep backfield, like that kind of seems to be the flavor right now of modern college football. Yeah,
and it's the flavor of football, period. Because that's just, and I think the way the NFL pays players has very quickly seeped into college football. Mm-hmm. Somebody's gonna there's always gonna be a Jerry Jones who's gonna extend Zeke.
Yep.
Until he did, but
sure.
But there's always gonna be somebody who's willing to pay a back. But there are going to be a lot of other teams that are like, because that's just how it goes now.
And if I'm a running back, I'm like, okay, I want to go somewhere where I don't have to take 30 carries a game. I want to be the Penny Boone and RJ Harvey. I want to be the Quinshon Judkins and Travian Henderson. Like, I want to have somebody else that can save my legs a little bit.
I don't know that was Penny Boone's plan.
Sure, but I mean,
to be backing up RJ Harvey.
Sure. I think the point stands, though. If you can save some tread on your tires for the NFL, that's a good thing for you from a selfish perspective, at least.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that, because I remember when I started doing this, my first job was covering University of Tennessee. And there was this mini recruiting controversy where the dad of a player got upset, and he released all these things that Philip Fulmer, these postcards that Philip Fulmer had sent to his son during his recruitment. And it's like, I promise you 25 carries a game. That you had to do that to get running backs back then.
Wow. Those days are long gone, huh?
Yeah, can you imagine doing that now? Can you imagine being like, I promise you 25 carries a game. Coach, there's no chance I'm going to your school.
I promise you will get less than 25 carries a game.
I promise you'll get less than 200 carries a year, and we will hand you off to the NFL with lots of tread on the tires.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, times have changed.
It is truly amazing. But, all right, LSU is here.
Yep.
The Tigers, we're going to talk about them because a lot of changes. They bring in Blake Baker. We talked about Missouri losing Blake Baker. Now Blake Baker comes to LSU as the defensive coordinator. And really, this defense did not change much personnel-wise.
No.
It is more Blake Baker, Kevin Peoples, Bo Davis, the new D-line coach, the new staff. How do they put the pieces in place to make this better than what it was last year, when it was one of the worst defenses in the country and probably the worst defense LSU has had in school history, which was especially painful because LSU had a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback, 2 first-round receivers, and an offense that couldn't be stopped.
And if you're hearing this on podcasts and saying, wait, the personnel didn't change very much, is that a bad thing? It's like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how much it's a bad thing. Right. But you still have a Harold Perkins.
Right.
There's still some players with ability on that roster. It's, okay, was it scheme or was it personnel? And what's the trade-off there in terms of success you can have in 2024?
Well, and let's talk about Harold Perkins a little bit, because – how he gets used was the big question last year. And Brian Kelly got asked about it and said, I hope that he's, that we fed him more, and that they should have, let him get a little bigger last season. And they did let him get bigger. And I saw him yesterday. He looks fantastic. So, but our guy Jesse Simonton asked a great question of Harold Perkins. This is the way you get at the answer you're looking for, but Harold Perkins didn't bite. But Harold Perkins' answer was funny anyway.
When you play the new EA game, you're going to line yourself up at off-ball linebacker or edge rusher in? How are you going to use Harold Perkins?
I'm gonna mix it around. He's gonna be all over from the D line. I probably even move him at safety.
What's the identity been under Blake Baker?
So Harold Perkins does not bite the hook, but actually in the game, I wouldn't mind throwing Harold Perkins at safety just to see what happens.
Not at all. Wonderful sparring between him and Jesse Simonton. I mean,
yeah.
it was a beautiful dance.
Well, here's my question. Remember how Florida State used Derwin James?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
I think it is. I guess my question is, what is the straight line speed on a Harold Perkins to run with a slot wide receiver?
The coverage thing is the thing that you don't maybe use him exactly like James. James was a freak of nature. They could line him up on the edge, and he could go at an offensive tackle and be okay. And he's smaller than Harold Perkins is.
Sure,
but it is it's very interesting because I do think there's a lot of things they can do with him, and that's a weapon that can change games. We've seen him do it.
Part of me is like, let's just stick with what he's best at. If we can get anything else out of him, phenomenal. But like when we try and move him around and put him at, inside linebacker and try and put him at safety or try and put him wherever, if you're going to move him around, like you are sacrificing snaps where he is hunting the quarterback.
Right.
And even if he's just lined up to hunt the quarterback, offenses will have to prepare for that week in and week out. And so I'm like, let's let him do what he does, and whatever else we can get out of him, great.
I think the fear is that somebody's just going to run straight at him.
Sure.
And if that's what happens, move him.
Yeah.
If it's a problem, if he's not able to handle that particular part of it, move him.
Yeah.
And because I do think the mystery of where is Harold going to be does stress the offense, or should stress the offense some.
Without a doubt.
It didn't stress offenses at all last year. So that's the issue. Now, I think LSU's offense is still going to stress defenses, though.
I think so. Even with 3 first-round picks gone to the league, even with their OC gone to Notre Dame, I still feel pretty good about the Tigers.
Yeah.
We talked this time last year about, man, can Jaden Daniels, will he throw it deep? Does he have the willingness to throw it deep? Nobody's asking that question with Garrett Nussmeier. Nobody's wondering if he wants to throw it deep or not. Yeah, guy likes throwing the ball downfield. That'll be fun.
So you sat down with Garrett Nussmeier, a topic you and I have discussed.
Yep.
I warned against this, but you went to the source to decide on the Garrett Nussmeier nickname. I believe it's been settled now. Here we go.
This is a nickname I've been trying to get some traction, and I want to hear your opinion because I get on the message boards and they say that nickname sucks. And I'm like,
I think I know
that's
where you're
fair.
going with this.
Just give me a letter grade on Gumbo Gunslinger.
Dude,
are we buying that? Are we selling that?
I like it.
Because you're the
Here's
authoritative
deal.
source
Here's
on it.
the deal. I love it. I think it's fire, but it's up to the people. You know what I'm saying? If they don't like it, then we got to just, I don't know. The Nuss Bus is kind of already stuck from what I'm seeing, so I like that. I've always kind of called myself Nuss Bus, just like messing around. So like when it kind of took off, I was like, all right, let's understand it a little bit. And people used to like make fun of me in high school and call me the Nuss Bus. So like, no, I get that one, but I like the Gumbo Gunslinger too. I mean, but like I said, that's not up to me. So.
Do you like gumbo? That's probably a good question.
My mom cooks chicken and sausage, and my grandma cooks seafood gumbo. So both of theirs, that's the best type of gumbo I could ever have.
Okay, so at least it fits in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's all. Okay, so we'll leave it up to the people, but I'm glad to hear that we have, at least on the depth chart, it's like maybe second.
Yeah, it's up there for
cool.
sure.
We'll take it.
So I think he's being a little diplomatic there.
Sure.
Since he uses Nuss Bus himself.
Yep.
But, the NIL person in me is thinking that you could make some Gumbo Gunslinger shirts. I think that would work.
Feels like it would sell. Like in asking that, there were 2 worst case scenarios. One was he says, "Yeah, that's cheesy. That sucks. I hate that."
Oh
and
no,
I'm like,
he wasn't.
oh, okay.
He was not going to say that to your face.
Right.
Yeah.
So that after we got off the air, he might have said that. The other worst case scenario was he says, "I don't like gumbo." So neither of those things happened, and I was like,
Not
okay,
only
we
that,
can live with that. That's okay.
Multiple relatives who each specialize in a different form of gumbo.
Yeah, versatile.
That's impressive.
Versatile depth. They got a good gumbo operation.
That's what I want. That's what I want in my LSU quarterback.
Absolutely.
JD, thank you so much. Been a pleasure. We're going to talk a little more about LSU, about Brian Kelly. You may have seen him on the Mechanical Bull, and about football in the SEC with a dude who played in the trenches in the SEC. Former LSU center T-Bob Hebert joins us next. Now by a man with much better chest hair than me, T-Bob Hebert.
All right, here, let me go ahead.
Oh, yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Sex sells. Sorry.
ESPN Radio Baton Rouge. Also, Snaps.
Yes, host of the Snaps
Incredible podcast with Aaron Murray.
Check it out. Me and Aaron Murray. YouTube.com/@SnapCFB.
There you go.
_
Love the plug.
A bit unwieldy. Just Google Snaps.
NASCAR driver level plug there.
Look, bro. I'm
impressed.
Like I told you, I talked to you about it. We're going independent with it now, so I'm going to whore myself up at every.
Listen, I am the same way. I'm walking down Radio Row like, let me tell you about On 3. But you're a Bengal Tiger subscriber, so you're getting your LSU stuff from On 3.
You do not have to tell me about On 3.
Yeah.
I love On 3. I always thought about it as just a recruiting website. But what I found to be very interesting ever since I subscribed, and to be clear, I host like a daily radio show, right? So the recruiting stuff, because I don't want to do the legwork, it's awesome for that because it's great for my audience and whatnot. But what I love is it's the coverage.
Yeah.
It's just all the coverage of the college game and being able to dive into whatever team that I'm interested in and getting insight that I wouldn't otherwise. And from the national guys, local guys, no, I mean, look, we all know Shannon's got quite the ability to create these things.
Oh,
and it seems like y'all have done it again and even better here at
we are having a lot of fun because we are trying to kind of capture the entire country.
Yes.
And so for the college football sicko, for these people who, like us, like our big question, and you've been answering this, I imagine, on your show over and over and over again, like my big thing today was, LSU's here. I want to know how they're going to use Harold Perkins. Tell me how they're like, and I guarantee there's a bunch of people in our audience that's all they want to know about.
Well, you know what's crazy? So here's a sign of how good Harold Perkins is. Last year, he had 15 TFLs and like 5.5 sacks.
Yeah,
which
is a decent season.
I mean, look, the D end from Ole Miss that's here today. I'm blanking on his name. He had like 5.5 sacks and like 11 TFLs, right? It's it's a great year. But he was such a phenom freshman year.
Yeah.
And he literally won games. We saw him
Arkansas
win
game.
you multiple games. The Arkansas one was unreal, right? And so so last year it's like, so I do this all to say, to give you an idea of the potential. That we all thought last year sucked and he was invisible, and he put up numbers that most people would actually be very excited to put up. So then you're like, okay, well, what's he going to do this year? The guy that is the key to making all of this work, and we actually have data here that we can point to, is new defensive coordinator Blake Baker.
Yeah.
When he came to LSU in 2021. That was after that disastrous COVID year. LSU goes 5-5.
Yep.
Bo Pelini's the D coordinator. Damone Clark was middle linebacker. Damone Clark, I think I called multiple times that year, like, this is the worst linebacker play I've ever seen. Like, watching film, breaking down, it was mind-boggling how bad it was. Blake Baker shows up. The next year, Damone Clark had 130 tackles, 16 and a half TFLs, 6 sacks, like 4 forced fumbles or something. Like, it wasn't just good. He went Super Saiyan in a single offseason. So we know the potential of Harold Perkins. We've established it. We give him a D coordinator that we have seen prove it on that level.
Look what he did with Tyron Hopper last year at Missouri.
Exactly. Made him as well, right? And so there's a lot of evidence that would make an LSU fan very excited about Harold Perkins getting back to being a superstar. And I talked to Baker the other day, and I brought up Clark just to kind of butter him up and, give him his roses, be like, that was a crazy transformation. And unbidden, he made the connection to Perk. He was like, and look, what I saw to Clark in the spring when I got to know him and I started to be like, this is actually how we're going to do things. He said he feels like he's seen the same returns from Perkins. And so it's like Brian Kelly said, man, this whole event is a great opportunity for the world to get to know Harold Perkins, because we don't really know him beyond just what we've seen him do on the field.
Got a hell of a grill today. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have not seen it.
It's tremendous.
Bro, I get
very shiny, like silver all the way.
Bro, I brought my daughters to they're 6-4, and they love LSU gymnastics. We love going to the meets. Electric, by the way, like 15K in that building. It's awesome.
100%.
I brought them to gymnastics practice the other day. Bruh, the cars in these parking lots now, are you shitting me? Everybody used to have, like, you know, your dad's Tacoma from back in the day, or I don't know, an Alario.
T-Bob played for LSU
07 to 11.
07 to 11. So,
and there were a couple Chargers.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe a couple Chargers mixed in the bunch.
But they were stock Chargers that somebody bought off a rental, like that a rental car company got done with them, and you bought the stock Charger for like 18 grand.
And now it's like that car's, and I'm not a car guy, but I mean, I have some knowledge. Like that's $100,000. My brother-in-law is obsessed with cars. Showed me one. He's like, "That's a $300,000 car." I'm like, "What?" I didn't even know who was getting out of it.
Yeah.
It's like, "Are you on the basketball team? I don't even know who you are."
Do you feel like you missed the offer? Like, I feel like you would have done incredibly well in the NIL era, even as the center.
I love. I want to be clear about this. I love everybody being paid. It is way past due. Labor, I'm always going to side with labor. So hell yes, it is awesome. The product is better. I love everybody being paid. I am jealous that yes, I am jealous that we were not given the same opportunities, because I would be making easily more than I'll ever make in my adult life.
Well, as I asked you, so T-Bob and I were hanging out by the pool when we got here, because that's guys like to let their bellies hang.
Yeah.
And look, SEC Media Days, bunch of reporters. That's where you want to go to the pool.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot. I mean, it's
the finest athletes in America running around here.
Some of the print guys. It's also nice to compare yourself to. But like no, but seriously,
But I asked you, were you in a Boosie video? And see, you could have been in a Boosie video, and they could have paid you for it.
But
although I don't know if Boosie ever paid anybody to be in a video.
You remember Jordan Jefferson?
Oh yeah.
He he manages a bunch of these young cats. He kind of I don't know if he's technical titles agents, but he put together a lot of NIL deals. We were at Stephen Ridley's wedding a little while ago. Congrats, Rid. And we're drunk and talking, and I don't know if he's just blowing smoke, but he was like, "Bro, you'd have been making $800 to $1 million a year." And again, I will never snip that. So there's a bit of like, but I want to be clear. It is vastly outweighed by, I am happy for these guys. Turns out it makes sense. You should be able to get paid for the fruits of your labor, like to make money off of your talents.
If 80,000 people are in the case of LSU, 100,000 people show up to watch you, there's some demand there. All right, speaking of people who make a lot of money, let's talk Brian Kelly.
Yes.
Because he's done well at LSU so far.
Yeah.
But what is the view of Brian Kelly locally? Because last year is so strange. The offense is so great. You've got a Heisman Trophy winner. You got 2 first-round receivers. And the defense is maybe as bad as we've ever seen in LSU defense, but they're still a double-digit win team at the end of the day.
So, I mean, look, I'm a firm believer that maybe unless you're like an Alabama or a Georgia, 10 wins is just a magic number.
Yeah.
Right? So if you go 9-3 regular season, you better get to 10 with that bowl game. I know we act like bowl games don't matter, but 9-4 and 10-3 feels massive in terms of setting the tenor of the offseason. So I think Brian Kelly's been really good through those first 2 years. There's definitely been your downsides, right? The game 1 debacle against Florida State, where like special teams, extra point block, all that stuff. Last year, in hindsight, not too much shame in losing that Florida State game at all, right? That was an awesome team, deserved to be in the playoff. But I guess the overall point of it is, I feel like nationally, there's an idea that like, are people upset? Like, shouldn't we be like, shouldn't he be knocking on the door for a championship? Blah, blah, blah. I feel like locally, people are pretty satisfied. Yeah. Now, obviously, this is year 3. It's going to be massive, and it's going to come down to what do you do this year. I would say this season, 9-3 would be okay with the majority of people. You're definitely still going to have people, some people up in arms, naysayers and whatnot.
And that may or may not get them into the playoff. It just depends on what everybody else
I don't think 9-3 is going to.
I think you've got to be 10-2.
I think 10-2's got to be that's the magic number.
Yeah.
And if you achieve that, well then, okay. That's that's a bona fide success. And what's weird is, had LSU won either season over the last 2 years, they would have been 10-2.
Yeah.
Like generally in this era of LSU football, if you've done that, you end up 10-2.
Yeah.
And so if you beat USC,
Yeah.
then I think there's actually not a bad chance that you find your way to 10-2.
And I was talking to our friend Braden Gall about that, and he said, he's like, that feels like a game that we'll take the wrong message from.
In what way?
That one of the defenses is better and one of them's not, and you're like, everything's fixed. It's going to be great, whoever it is.
It's a lot. I would say, like you said, narratively, that matchup is so fascinating because Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley have been inexorably linked since the coaching search.
Happened on the same day, and they have the same agent.
Also, Lincoln used LSU as a smokescreen,
right?
Saying, I am not going to be the LSU coach. Didn't say anything about USC.
We talked about that on the show a few weeks ago. It's genius.
And then and then LSU used Lincoln.
Right.
Because that's whatever they thought that's who they were going after, and they were secretly working the Kelly deal the entire time. So from day one, they've been linked in a weird way. Now they're both entering year 3. They both lost their Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. They both had these horrendous defenses, spent millions of dollars remaking the defensive staff. So there's so many similarities. The only thing is, I do think objectively, LSU's in a much better spot, which is why I think this is the most important game of Brian Kelly's time at LSU, and it's not even close. Not even close.
So
not even the SEC championship, nothing, because he has to prove, first off, to win an opener.
Yep.
But beyond that, like, USC was not good last year. You still were a 10-3 team.
Right, exactly.
Like, you should. Miller Moss, I don't think is Garrett Nussmeier. I'm kind of a Miller Moss naysayer. I didn't think the bowl game statistically impressive. I didn't think the film was that impressive. Like, LSU has to win this game. If they don't, that's a bit of a disaster.
And the thing is, for people who assume, they lost the Heisman Trophy winner, they lost Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., I don't worry about this offense very much. I feel like Garrett Nussmeier, it's the old school succession plan that used to be what every school did, and now nobody can do it anymore.
And, Andy, we both know this. Where does it all start?
It
all starts up front.
Yeah.
And LSU has the best O-line I've ever seen.
You're not saying that, it's not hyperbole.
No. Like now, granted, I if you want to narrow it to, like, probably for me to accurately say, like, the best O-line I've ever seen at LSU, as a fan or covering it.
Yeah. Or as a player too. Or,
you
had some amazing teams.
No, definitely as a player. Like, even like, I was a part of an O-line where we went undefeated and everything, but like nobody made the NFL.
Right.
So we were just a good blue collar college group of O-linemen.
Yeah, they're sitting there with 4 or 5 starters who will make it to the NFL.
Will Campbell will not. I'm pretty sure. We got to look up his birthday. I know he's 20 right now.
Yeah.
But I don't think he turns 21 till after the season, and he's number 1 on the athletics big board.
Yeah, he's a top 5 pick.
I've never seen an offensive lineman come in, go 3 years, no redshirt, 3 years, and before he's even 21, we're viewing him as the number 1 draft prospect.
Well, I'll tell you, I was at Tennessee in the spring, so I got my first look at Lance Hurd.
Yeah, oh God, he's a monster,
and I'm watching him move, and I'm like, oh my God.
He's unbelievable.
And Will Campbell and Emory Jones are better than him.
Yes, yes.
That tells you what you're dealing with at LSU.
I mean, I'm so bummed because Lance Hurd it felt like you just weren't going to miss a beat. But again, it was just like,
he's stuck behind him. What's he going to do?
He can't, because Emory Jones is also awesome. And then it's like Lance, like, if somebody's, and this is where the economics of college are fascinating nowadays. And this ties into Kelly as well, because he had the quotes about basically saying, like, it's not that we don't have the money. It's about, like, can I justify? Is it a smart use of resources? They couldn't pay Lance Hurd more than they're paying Will Campbell.
Right, and they couldn't pay Dominic Williams or any of those defensive tackles.
Yeah.
And so I got on Kelly about that because I thought the we don't buy players thing was disingenuous.
Well, yes. That was
what he
not,
said.
that's
what
true.
he said after that in that same interview, which was, we didn't like the price tag on these particular players, was the truth.
That's the actual takeaway there.
Yeah.
And that's funny to watch coaches have to navigate that, because it's like, it sucks. You want to keep a guy like Lance Hurd, but if Tennessee's going to pay him more, then you just got to let him go.
Yeah,
because you cannot pay the backup more than the starter. You just can't do it.
And that's also how talent gets distributed more equitably. Because in your era, you guys were stockpiling. Like, the defense that was opposite you guys your senior year.
Oh, bro, it's crazy.
Is probably the most talented defense we've ever seen.
I mean, we had Benny Logan running scout team. I think it's like a sophomore, and then he ended up being like a top 3 round pick or something like a year or two later.
Yeah.
Like, It's same thing with Michael Brockers. It's just, so that's what I love about this era is I was so wrong. And you never know in life when something seismic happens what the ripple effects will be.
Yeah.
And I was so wrong. I thought that this was all going to lead to a further concentration at the top, right?
Yeah.
I thought the haves would get stronger and the have-nots would get
Everybody
poorer.
just go to Alabama, take the money, and just sit on the bench.
And nothing could have been further from the truth.
Yeah.
We have had this incredible smushing where, like you said, the top teams can no longer stockpile, so those guys filter out around like a triangle going like this. And then now you have from below, the group of 5 and all these other guys that prove themselves, they now get to spread out on these teams. And so all of a sudden, and you're not doomed because you messed up one recruiting class at this position one year.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's actually leading to such a better product overall and a way more democratized college football, which I would have never thought.
So in the SEC, though, are Georgia and Alabama still kind of separate from everybody else?
To me, they are. I know I'm higher on Alabama than most, though.
I am very high on Alabama. I think we're in the same place on them.
Be, dude. Yeah. Kalen DeBoer did more with less than anybody in the country consistently, and now he has more than everybody in the country. And tell me this. Find me a quarterback who one of the top quarterbacks that is more poised to take a massive leap than Jalen Milroe. There's not one.
Yeah, he's very raw going into last year.
Bro, it's only 1 year starting.
Yeah.
Look at the improvement for the beginning and the end. Understand that now he enters this year with, I mean, there's no bigger difference I found than your first year starting to your second in terms of the game slowing down, confidence, all that. We all thought Tommy Rees was some kind of Wunderkind golden boy. Nobody even thinks about him anymore. I kind of don't think
I mean, you look at what Kalen DeBoer did, not just with Michael Penix Jr., but with Jake Haener.
That's what I'm saying.
With Indiana version of Michael Penix Jr.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So, like, we kind of now know that maybe Reese was a bit trumped up and maybe not actually this extra normal talent. We know DeBoer is.
Yeah.
So you give him second year starting, way more stable environment in terms
incredible
of
offensive line. Now, he had a good one last year.
Where he sits on the depth chart. Great offensive line. An offensive genius who is more proven than anybody at consistently winning with less. And you give him clear areas to improve, which is in the short to intermediate game. Yeah. And it all lines up to Jalen Milroe should take a massive leap. Now the weapons are a problem on the outside, right? And so we have to see if he can overcome those. But I hate it. And again, guys, I hate Alabama down, I mean, in my soul, right? Like down in my nuts, my toes, wherever. Like my RNA hates Alabama. So I say this all very begrudgingly, but just that's my read on it, is that they're not going to miss a beat. And Texas and Ole Miss still have to prove to me that they belong to be in that Georgia-Alabama conversation.
And we will find out. And we get some of the new blood. Got Oklahoma coming, got Georgia coming.
Oof. Oklahoma's fascinating.
Got Tennessee coming. Got Missouri coming. That's it. So in this lineup on Tuesday, 4 potential playoff teams.
I know. And you know what's crazy about Oklahoma? First off, I think they had the most confusing year ever last year, where they win 10 games, they beat Texas, but they also blew it to the point where they allowed Texas. They didn't just blow it for them personally, but in blowing their own chance at a Big 12 championship, they put their arch rival back in, put them over into the playoff. Like, it could not have been a more disastrous 10-win season.
Yes.
10-win regular season than what Brent Venables did last year.
But here's the thing, and this is what I keep coming back to. They beat Texas last year.
Yeah.
They can beat Texas this year, too.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, this is where Oklahoma gets fascinating to me, is Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, Mizzou. All teams that I think are either going to be 9-3 and not make a playoff, or 10-2 and make it.
Yeah.
Who gets over the hump? They all play Oklahoma. Every one of them plays. So Oklahoma,
and the
to
Auburn
me,
fans are all like, hey, we also play them.
But Auburn, I don't think Auburn factors into this conversation.
No faith in Hugh Freeze here.
But I'll say that I like you. I like you long term.
I think Hugh Freeze is going to beat somebody and ruin their year.
He will punch up, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I guess the point is, I view Oklahoma as the playoff gatekeeper. Because whoever whoever wins that game likely finds
So
a way
Oklahoma
to 10-2.
is Gandalf on the bridge.
They are, yes. You shall not or you shall. That, like, you have to find a way what the Balrog could not do. You have to find a way to get through Oklahoma.
You knew I had T-Bob on.
Trey, if you
I was
give
either
me a
going to get
heads
Star
up
Wars
when
or
I'm
Lord of the
about to
Rings. We
come
made it
back.
to Lord of the Rings first. T-Bob, thank you so much.
Andy, thank you so much, brother. Take it easy, man.
Yep. That is T-Bob Hebert. I am standing up now because that sun is incredible. It is blazing. So we'll give you a little better view of SEC Media Days here. Over there is the big room. That's where the coaches talk. That's where Greg Sankey gave his State of the League address. More Radio Row down here. Our guys T-Bob Hebert, Jacob Hester, they're doing their show. So it just occurred to me, we spent all that time with JD talking about Missouri coming today, talking about Oklahoma coming today. Tennessee and Georgia are also coming today. Tennessee is a team that I think there's a massive amount of excitement for locally. I'm not sure nationally if people are quite as high on the Vols as I think they should be. I have Tennessee in my top 10 preseason, and you look at the depth on the defensive line, you look at how good James Pierce is off the edge, but putting in Nico Iamaleava at quarterback changes the math for Tennessee. They were very limited with Joe Milton last year. There's a lot more they can do. I don't think you're going to hear a lot of guys saying that outright, but that's the truth. And so that's why they're so excited. They feel like offensively, they're going to be a lot more multiple. They're more open. They'll be able to do more things this year. They just were very limited. The middle of the field is essentially off limits to them on offense last year. So Tennessee's very excited. And then, of course, you've got Georgia, winner of 2 of the last 3 national titles, a team that lost the SEC championship game last year. But if there'd been a 12-team playoff, who's to say that Georgia would not have won the national championship? You put them in a 12-team tournament last year, there's a really good chance they wind up winning the national title. I'm very excited to hear what Kirby Smart says as the hunter again. He spent 2 years as the hunted. Now they're the hunter again. And I don't think Georgia's lost much. I don't think they've lost a step. And you add pieces like Trevor Etienne, and then obviously another great recruiting class. And there's young guys who haven't played yet who are now going to move into bigger roles. This is going to be a very exciting year. This is going to be a very exciting day. I don't remember a day at a conference media day where there was this much star power coming in one day. And this is only a quarter of the league. That's the crazy part. Texas still hasn't come. Alabama still hasn't been here. This is going to be a very, very fun year in the SEC. And just the amount of interesting people, interesting storylines here on just this one day at SEC Media Days is kind of emblematic of that. So cannot wait. And we will talk to you tomorrow after we talk to the Bulldogs, the Tigers, the Vols, and the Sooners.